Chris Grier and the Miami Dolphins made one heck of a blockbuster trade on Monday morning when they sent Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith to the Steelers and received Minkah Fitzpatrick and draft capital in return. And this only makes it more interesting going for the future here with Miami because there are needs on the roster. A big move may be coming at the tight end position, and we know they're going to add a cornerback as well. We'll dive into the latest rumors around this football team after the big trade. I am Nic Rohloff, but I wanted to start by revisiting that trade that went down on Monday. This is the full trade details between Miami and Pittsburgh. Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, the Pro Bowl tight end, the Pro Bowl caliber corner, heads to Pittsburgh alongside a 7th-round pick in 2027. Miami gets back Minkah Fitzpatrick, who played just about 1.5 seasons in Miami after being drafted in the first round, plus a 5th-round pick in 2027. And most people, myself included, thought that the most stunning part of this entire deal was not that Ramsey and Jonnu Smith were both heading to Pittsburgh, but the Dolphins were actually getting Minkah Fitzpatrick in return, a multi-time All-Pro safety, 4-time Pro Bowler since joining the Pittsburgh Steelers. Fitzpatrick has been one of the best safeties in the game, and although he has struggled over the past couple of seasons, is a very welcomed addition to the secondary. And I know a lot of people are curious about the financial side of things based off what Miami is paying Ramsey to go to Pittsburgh and what the Steelers are paying Minkah Fitzpatrick. It actually comes out to a wash. The Dolphins will be paying Jalen Ramsey a total of about $18 million this season. Well, so will the Steelers when it comes to Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's like an NBA-level trade to where they don't need to match, but the salaries almost do. And with Minkah returning back to the Miami, I want to welcome him home. Why not, right? I know it ended a little rough the first time around, but he's back, and the Dolphins have a top 5 safety in the NFL. So hit that thumbs up icon to welcome Minkah back home. And if he sees this, I want him to know that the Dolphins fans are welcoming him back. So hit that thumbs up icon. And as we move forward now with the rest of the offseason, just 2 or 3 weeks away from training camp getting underway, I have always said that I wanted the Miami Dolphins to sign not 1 but 2 cornerbacks once they traded Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Once you get Minkah Fitzpatrick back, I'm cool with just adding 1. There feels a little bit of an overkill if the Dolphins ended up getting Minkah Fitzpatrick back and then signing 2 free agent corners. I think it's just fine if you go out and grab 1. Now, which one is it? That's the question that remains to be seen. But with the safety room looking more like this, you just have so much versatility with this group. Minkah, I'll slide him in at free safety. I think Ifeatu Melifonwu could have a very large role. I think it would either be him or Ashton Davis as that secondary safety. But now you have Patrick Morris, Dante Trader Jr., Elijah Campbell, kind of as those other people fighting for a roster spot. And now it is not very clear on what safeties actually do end up making the roster. But the good thing about your secondary is that it is very versatile, right? The cornerback room needs to be upgraded. There's no doubt about that. But Fitzpatrick is so good at moving around where he can be playing free safety. He can play in the box a little bit. He can play a little bit of the nickel. You talk about Ifeatu Melifonwu playing all over the football field in the secondary. So you've got a couple guys in your safety room that could bounce around and play different spots. And we know, though, Miami is going to look for a prototypical outside corner to add to this roster because, no offense, and I say this all the time, but Cam Smith and Storm Duck just ain't it, man. Like, those two just aren't able to be 2 outside-level starting corners. And we talk about how the safeties could bounce around and play a little bit of nickel. Well, your best corner in Kader Kohou is a nickel. Now, is the plan to move Kader Kohou to the outside, have one of these safeties play nickel, and run, like, an interesting little lineup of 2 corners and 3 safeties, and then you have your normal, like, front 7? Like, how is this going to work? Like, I'm very fascinated by this, and there's so many different outcomes where we might ultimately see, but there is no doubt that Miami is going to sign a corner. And we have talked about these 4 ad nauseum this offseason ever since the Ramsey trade rumors have begun, but we kind of knew they were going to sign a corner even if they kept Jalen Ramsey. These are the 4 people I expect Miami to target. We'll talk more about these 2 up here. Rasul Douglas Asante Samuel Jr., who Miami has had contact with, but Mike Hilton and Stephon Gilmore remain other top options as well, both experienced above the age of 30 corners. Gilmore is still that boundary corner that you might be able to trust on the outside. So, today's pinned comment, name a dude. Which cornerback would you want the Dolphins to sign? Would you rather have them go with Gilmore, Hilton, Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas? Ramsey's officially gone. Who is that corner that you want Miami to ultimately go sign? I am going to stay true to what I've been saying over the last month, and it's going to be either one of Asante Samuel Jr. or Rasul Douglas. And as I mentioned earlier, that I've talked a lot about how I would want to sign both of them. I only think you need to go with one now after you get Minkah Fitzpatrick back, and I do prefer Asante Samuel Jr. over Rasul Douglas because of his youth and his upside is a lot higher. But Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald reporting that the Dolphins have remained in contact with Douglas. Maybe they strike a deal there, and we know that the Dolphins reached out to Asante Samuel Jr. earlier in the offseason as well. He is not going to sign with a team until he gets medically cleared after his checkup coming up here in a couple weeks in the early parts of July, and kind of re-looking at that neck surgery he had in April. But can I make the statement here that's a little bit aggressive? I know cornerback has been the topic of discussion here this offseason. It's brutal. It's brutal for sure. But I'll make the argument right now that the tight end room is actually worse than the cornerback room. And I don't think that's really crazy to say that. After Jonnu Smith is traded, this is maybe the worst tight end room assembled in the history of the National Football League. And I really mean that. I mean, Julian Hill as your tight end 1 is maybe the most embarrassing thing I have ever seen. At this point, it will change, but still, at this point, it's crazy. Pharoah Brown being tight end 2, crazy. Tanner Conner 3, crazy. Like, Hayden Rucci and Jalen Conyers, like, they're not going to be starters at this point in their career. So it's like, how, and they won't, could you ever imagine going into a NFL season with that being your tight end room? I think the Dolphins roster is actually in a really good spot as a whole. I think it's fine for a team that isn't expected to win a Super Bowl, but is hopeful to make a run to the playoffs and maybe win a postseason game to save Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier's job. But those corner and tight end rooms, I think it's the worst cornerback room in the NFL. And I think it's the worst tight end room in the NFL. If you just upgrade those two spots a little bit, well, now we're cooking with a pretty solid roster. And make sure you do subscribe as well, because Miami will continue to make additions to this group, whether it's at the cornerback department, whether it is in a tight end trade or tight end signing. Make sure you subscribe, because when Dolphins news happen, we have you covered. What happened when Jalen Ramsey got traded? Oh, yeah, we made a video and went live. We'll continue to make you the most up-to-date Dolphins fan you need to be. But I do believe the Dolphins do need to make a trade, as we still focus on the tight end room and the conversation around that grouping. And I've let my piece be known about how bad this tight end room is. Well, on Monday, when the trade happened, about a couple minutes after, Tom Pelissero had the note that the Dolphins are now in conversations with multiple teams about acquiring a tight end after sending Jonnu Smith to Pittsburgh, per sources. A wild start to the holiday week could get even wilder. And to me, there are 4 tight ends available that make me intrigued here. Kyle Pitts, Michael Mayer, Mark Andrews, and Cole Kmet. And I know a lot of people are actually also going to mention Isaiah Likely, the other Baltimore Ravens tight end, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I think Baltimore would be more willing to move off of Mark Andrews than they are as Isaiah Likely. I think they really like Likely. But these 4 make a lot of sense. There's buzz about Kyle Pitts being available on the market. There's already reports of the Dolphins being interested in Michael Mayer. Cole Kmet's a long shot. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but Mark Andrews is an option as well. Just off first glance, and I said this, I think I want Kyle Pitts the most. When the original report came out about 3 weeks ago from Jeremy Fowler that the Falcons could look to trade Kyle Pitts if they get the right offer, as he is entering the final year of his rookie contract, I said I would love to trade for Kyle Pitts. Now, I do prefer to just keep Jonnu Smith. That obviously didn't happen, but I did say in that video, I was like, hey, if Jonnu Smith gets traded, let's go after Kyle Pitts. And I'm still fully on that train. Yeah, he has really never put together a season like he did in his rookie year, but this is a top 5 pick, someone who's a very talented ball player, and I think would fit extremely well in Miami. I saw some people say that Kyle Pitts wouldn't fit with the Dolphins. I'm just going to have to respectfully disagree. Everyone is able to have their own opinion. Yes, Kyle Pitts is not the best run blocker, and if you did want to have Kyle Pitts as your main tight end, you probably would have to run a decent amount of 12 personnel so you can have 2 tight ends on the field, because he is not going to give you the best blocking that you're going to ask for. But I will say this when it comes to Kyle Pitts. I just don't think there's a player that you'll be able to find more dynamic over the middle of the football field at that tight end position than Pitts. What happened with Jonnu Smith that made him so good? The screen game, the over the middle of the field, the ability to make people miss after the catch, that yak. Kyle Pitts is able to do that at a very high level and would make the loss of Jonnu Smith feel very seamless with Pitts coming into the fold. And he could break out, and you could extend a young tight end that's still only 24, 25 years old. I'm going to round out the show here in a second, but we got a Dolphins Nike Polo on sale, usually about $65. You can grab it for $40 right now. How about that? $25 off. Go to chatsports.com/MIA Nike Polo. One more time, chatsports.com/MIA Nike Polo. This will be on sale. XXX is gone, but they still got smalls, medium, large, XL, and 2Xs. Grab yours today. Links in the description and comments of today's video. Even though I speak so highly of Kyle Pitts, I do actually question if he's even available. Listen, Jeremy Fowler said they would be willing to listen to offers, considering the fact that he has not really kind of lived up to the expectations. That new coaching staff wasn't the regime that drafted him, and they don't know if they want to pay him. I'll be willing to take that gamble on Kyle Pitts. I want that very clear for the Dolphins fans at home. I'm willing to make that deal. But let's talk about another potential option out of those four. It's Michael Mayer, and this one is the one that I feel like is the most likely, if we're going to be honest. Not because he is the best. He's actually the worst tight end out of the four that we mentioned. But I think he would be the cheapest and easiest to acquire because the Raiders already have Brock Bowers, one of the best up-and-coming tight ends. So Mayer could become available as he's been a little bit of a disappointment for a day two pick in that 2023 NFL draft. And Mike Florio, Pro Football Report, already reported that the Dolphins have interest in Michael Mayer. But this shouldn't be anything that's surprising because there was some level of connection between Mayer and Miami in the draft in 2023, but also when the original report right before the NFL draft this year came out about Mayer potentially being on the block. And then Omar Kelly continues to add more fuel to the fire here with saying that the Dolphins have had their eye on Michael Mayer for a while. He's had some on and off the field challenges, but he's under contract for the next 2 years at an extremely cheap value. And the Dolphins could be interested. And he also made the note that they're obviously also looking for cornerback help. That comes as no surprise. But yeah, Mayer is entering year 3 of his four-year rookie contract. He just simply hasn't been that good for LV. And that's why they took Brock Bowers in the top 15 of the NFL draft after the 2023 season, and he looks like one of the best up-and-coming tight ends that we've seen in a really long time. Mayer is a really big body with a big catch radius. He's not the best guy in terms of yak. Like, he's not going to be a Jonnu Smith or a Kyle Pitts making people miss after the catch, but he's a physical possession tight end who also is a decent enough run blocker, in my opinion. Had a down second season due to Bowers being there, but he also missed 6 games due to personal reasons. So you would have to make sure he's all good on that front. But he would, to me, be the cheapest option Miami could go out and get. You talk about those 4 tight ends that you have to trade for in Kyle Pitts, Mayer, Mark Andrews, I don't know why I spaced, in Cole Kmet. Mark Andrews could go for a 4th or 5th. I think Cole Kmet goes for like a 3rd or a 2nd, to be honest. I think Kyle Pitts goes for a 3rd. You probably could get Michael Mayer for a 5th-round pick. So if you were trying to get the cheapest option in terms of what it would cost you financially, as well as what it would cost you in a trade with draft capital, Michael Mayer is easily the number one choice if you're looking for cheapness. But let's talk about quickly Mark Andrews here. This is one of the most distinguished tight ends in the NFL. And I'll say this. He's had a couple of declining seasons, if you will, but I mean, I'm still willing to take this guy for sure to be your number one tight end. Is he the best blocker? No, but he is good in terms of running routes, making people miss. Not as good as he used to be. Obviously, had a couple crucial drops in the playoffs, but I think Mark Andrews would be relatively cheap to acquire. I think he'd be cheaper than Kyle Pitts and Cole Kmet. I think you get Mark Andrews for a 4th or 5th, almost similar to what Michael Mayer would go to, but he is the most accomplished tight end, without a question, that we're talking about on this show. But Cole Kmet remains a very interesting option as well. This guy just signed a massive extension. I would say massive. It was like I think it was like a 4 for like 56 contract. I don't know the exact number off dome, but I think it was around there with Chicago before this past year. Well, he didn't have the best season with Caleb Williams, down from the 2023 year where he played really well alongside Justin Fields and company. But then the Bears draft Colston Loveland, the top tight end in this NFL draft. Now, some people might have thought it was Tyler Warren from Penn State, but Loveland went ahead of him to Chicago. So could the Bears be like, all right, we drafted Loveland. Yeah, the idea is to run a 2 tight end set with Ben Johnson calling the plays, but hey, if the Dolphins are coming in strong with a 3rd-round pick offer for Cole Kmet, 3 years left on his deal, yeah, we'll deal him off, and we'll just roll with Loveland as our main tight end. They also have Durham Smythe to be their tight end too, potentially. So Cole Kmet is certainly an intriguing option. But out of the 4 tight ends that we talked about briefly here, which one do you think is the one you'd want? Pick a tight end for me. KP for Pitts, MM for Michael Mayer, MA for Mark Andrews, or CK for Cole Kmet. Let me know your pick down below. And as I said a little bit earlier, I am going to pine for Kyle Pitts. That would be the player that I want. I am willing to send out a little bit of a higher draft pick to get Kyle Pitts. And the reason why I am fine doing that is because, remember, the Dolphins actually have 2 third-round picks this year. And that's why when the draft was going on in April and Chris Grier traded back in the 4th round with the Texans and picked up their 3rd-round pick in 2026, I thought it was a great deal. Because, the Dolphins could have used the pick in that 4th round, but you pick up a way more valuable pick next year in the top 100. Yes, sign me up for that so you can trade a 3rd round for Kyle Pitts and not feel guilty about it because you will still have a 3rd round pick regardless. You can trade your own pick. You can trade the Houston pick. It doesn't matter. You still have one in that 3rd round for the 2026 draft, which is why I think Pitts is the best option because you can make it happen. I think you'd also fit the best as well. That'll do it for today's episode of Dolphins Today. Appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with us here. As I continue to say, make sure you subscribe for the top Dolphins coverage on YouTube. And when news happens, we break it down and have you covered. And we might even go live too. So join the channel today.